Hello, this is the lesson number 12, and today we are going to analyze if translation is art, science, or craft. Translation, as a branch of humanities, is closely related to human development, but as most humanities branches, it still has ambiguities and controversies. One of these ambiguities is if translation can be considered as an art, science, or craft. Without trying to be exhaustive or influential, here some important aspects are stated in relation to this topic in order to provide some hints so you can take a position toward this, so you can take it to your translating practice. Here, translation is considered as a communication means, which is an essential tool by which people from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds interact for a social, cultural, or communicative act. As a tool, it offers a range of renderings and use which the translator needs to be aware of to properly produce a suitable message. Some scholars have openly accepted that translation is an art which deals with human creation and, as a consequence, requires human creativity to produce an acceptable output. Formulas and rules cannot be followed to render an accurate product. At the same time, the lack of objective terminology leaves translation in a kind of limbo, where any translator or scholar may decide based on personal taste if it's an art, science, or craft. Scholars and translators consider translation as a science when they state that there is a correspondence among languages and word-for-word rendering is possible. Furthermore, when translation is considered based on language theories, a process, an operation where tools, procedures, and techniques are applied, definitely translation is considered as a science. The fact that it can be acquired and studied as a system of knowledge by following process and rules also describe an aspect of a science. If translation is considered as a common activity, as a secondary branch of a more important discipline, or as a second-hand art, then it is considered a craft, which requires training. On the other hand, scholars and translators have never agreed on what translation is, nor in ambiguous terminology to define it, so it may not be at the level of a science. There is a group of scholars and translators that come up with a Solomon's solution and accept translation as an art, a science, and a craft, because it implies in a way or another creativity, subjectivity, and common sense to produce a suitable rendering of a message. It also implies the application of procedures, processes, and techniques. At the same time, as any craft or science, it relies in a theoretical corpus and provides information to formulate new constructs to support this corpus. Moreover, as a science or craft, it can be learned and taught. As a sum, translation is more widely categorized as a cognitive discipline, which tends to reach a position as a science. Nonetheless, the subjectivity of its object of study and the disagreement among scholars and translators on the terminology used to define it, which is a drawback to fulfilling in widely considering as a science. As a translator interested more on the rendering of a message rather than on studying the principle involved in such a process, we must be aware that depending on multifactorial aspects of our translating activity, we may take one position or another in relation to how we perceive translation. Then we can see the reference according to the document. I didn't read the whole passage because you are going to have the PDF in your hands. For that reason is that I didn't read the whole material. So that's all for today's lesson. So right now make an analysis and arrive to conclusions whether translation is a science, craft, or whether translation is an art, craft, or science. It is your choice to be made.